Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Good afternoon. Today is Friday, October 14th. We have a lot in store for you. Let me just tell you who I am. I am Robert Press, official press person of the city of New York. And I won't have this next week. I'll have a new one because next week I'm getting my new press card for 2 more years. But let me introduce my host, Mr. Anthony RIVIECCIO. Anthony, please tell us about yourself, since you have so many different Go ahead, Anthony.
Good morning, Robert. Good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO. As Robert was trying to indicate, I got 99 lives, which are really 3. My first and predominant life is that I am celebrating my 32nd year as an income tax and financial advisor. So I'm sure you've opened up your 401k statement. Feel free to give me a call. The second life that I have is that I am an adjunct professor of personal finance and business at both Herbert H. Lehman College and Monroe College. And my third life, which brings me here, is that I am the founder of a wonderful Northwest Side political organization called Northwest Bronx Democrats.
Okay, well, since Mr. Anthony RIVIECCIO, you're an expert on finance, let's get into our Bidenomics segment.
Yeah.
What is happening in Bidenomics this week?
Well, you know, Robert, before we classify it into Bidenomics, although at the end of the day it does fall under his reign, let's call it the financial markets in general. So to answer your question, the financial markets in general are going absolutely haywire. And what we have is basically 2 governments at work. You know, when it comes to our financial system and the stock market and the bond markets, there are really 2 entities that control that, government entities. One is called the Congress, that creates fiscal policy, and then our Federal Reserve Board, which creates monetary policy. And in a simple and perfect world, you want them to work together. What I mean by together is, if one believes the economy needs to slow down for whatever reasons that they believe, then the other part of that government should implement policies that make the economy expand. So you sort of have an offset either way. So at the end of the day, the glass is still full. We do not have that right now. What we have is a Federal Reserve Board that believes that because inflation in 1 year has gone from 2% to 10%, and it is now hovering at 7-8%, they have made recent statements to believe that is their primary mission. Their mission is to bring it back to 2%. They will hack interest rates as high as it can go until they get inflation down to 2%.
And that means, Tony, that the stock market is going like a roller coaster, up and down.
Well, right. But again, understand it's because of both parties not working together, right? That's the Federal Reserve Board's position. Congress's current position is, okay, well, if the Federal Reserve Board is going to slow down our economy, then what does the Congress do to make our economy move faster? Well, the government has made a decision that they're going to increase government spending, whether it has to do with different types of government subsidies or not. And of course, the Congress's logic is that we need relief, right? That we've been under this belief, some of it very justifiable, that because we've been in a national crisis for the last few years, that we need different types of government relief. Put that all together, what does it mean? It now means for 2022, many people would say we are now in a mild recession. We have now had 2 consecutive quarters of downwards economic growth. Both of those policies have affected the stock market as well as the bond market. Of course, everybody looks at their 401k statement And justifiably so, they could be worried because year to date, it's been down 18%. Year over year, it's been down 16%. But Robert, you know what? That's not the big problem. The big problem is not the stock market. The big problem is the bond market, right? Because a year ago, you could get a 2-year bond at 0.8%.
Wow.
Today, you can now get that same bond at 4.5%. So you might be saying to yourself, well, let me run to the bank or let me run to the government to go get that 4.5 bond. And that's what you would get. But Robert, what if you had that bond that was 0.8? That means your bond has decreased 72% in value. If you sold it today, which of course you can through the financial markets, that 0.8% bond you bought a year ago would now be worth 72% less. So anyone that's held bonds for the last couple of years is probably having 2, maybe even 3 times more roller coaster rides than the stock market.
So Anthony, let me ask you a question, Anthony. Why is this happening under Joe Biden and it didn't happen under Donald Trump?
Well, you know, I can't answer for Donald Trump. I can't answer for Joe Biden. You know, again, our economy reacts to what I call both financial information and also what I call financial hype. And as I've said for many, many months, you know, well, first and foremost, let me say that you know, I cannot give specific advice because it's my fiduciary duty not to give general advice. However, you know, I generally say to try to have other people think, well, you know, if I say there's more bad points than good points looking forward, or vice versa, right? That should give people a general sign of my train of thought. And as I said to people, maybe as far as January, February, that I do not see better good signs than bad signs. Let's talk about this week's numbers, just as an example, right? This week we had retail sales numbers that came out. Now, if I tell you on an annual basis, retail sales with 3%, you might think, oh, that's okay. That's not bad, right? If I tell you consumer spending numbers, which just came out today, were year over year at 2%, you might say, oh, okay, that's not great, but it's not bad, right? We're, you know, okay, right? Now, those numbers do not account for inflation.
Do they?
So now you're plugging inflation, and guess what? Retail sales is down, right? Consumer spending is down. If you remember a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Bidenomics, I said to you, consumer spending was one of the driving factors that was still keeping our economy afloat. Well, now inflation has definitely hit the consumer, which is now showing on the balance sheet.
Does those numbers do those numbers include like Amazon and other, you know, eBay and all of that?
You be more specific.
The numbers that you say, the spending and the index, do they include Amazon? Includes everything. Okay.
Oh yes.
And
and then again this morning, right? Perfect example. You know, the markets were looking at what was happening overseas. Of course, our banking system put out their financial statements this morning. Many banks did very well. Wells Fargo did well. Chase Manhattan Bank did well. Citigroup did well. Some of the regional banks, like First Republic, did not. But you would presume now that once the opening bell opened, that we would have a good day. And we started to have a good day. As we speak, the market is down 1% for the day. And of course, the market closes at 4 p.m.
All right, Anthony, one final thing I want to say. The numbers for Social Security, the hike is 8.7%. Am I correct on that?
Technically, it's 8.5.
All right. Well, let's get off of Bidenomics and go into some local issues. We're going to pass by the national and the state issues because a lot of stuff has happened locally. The city council, land use committee voted, and then the full city council voted, and they voted 48-0 to approve the Bruckner upzoning. Any comments on that, Tony?
Any comments on that, Tony? You know, I have several comments, but I'll try to keep it very light. You know, the most dangerous thing in the Bronx today, no matter what area of the Bronx you live in my opinion, is zoning. I understand, of course, zoning has to be changed, you know, as time goes on for a variety of different reasons. But zoning does change neighborhoods. So I think it's been, you know, I think it's very important that community boards that have not had as much housing development as other parts of the Bronx really look at their zoning procedures. And then again, you know, it's up to what the community wants to do. Maybe they want a down zone, maybe they want an up zone, maybe they want a sideways zone. But whatever, you know, that community wants, I think they really have to put together a game plan, because in many other parts of the Bronx, as we know, in the last 20 years, zoning has changed the Bronx very dramatically. So to answer your question about Bruckner upzoning, to my understanding, I don't live in that area, but to my understanding, in community meetings that I've seen, I would say over 90% don't want it. And again, you know, I think it's based on what the community wants. It seems like both the city council and the current council member, who I understand, like any other council member, would have had deference on the project, but did not execute her deference on the project, doesn't look like she spoke to the community. So I think there's going to be a very big problem in that, in this project.
Let me just say, I was on Community Board 8. We approved a project on West 231st Street and Broadway. It was a shopping center. And we were given a schematic of what it would have, including a movie theater, etc. What the community wound up with was Aldi and 99-cent stores basically inside there. Not what we approved. And what happens now is that it's been approved by the city council. Anything can happen. People are betting that the owner of the property is going to sell it to a developer, and then anything can happen. Something else, you can wind up with 10 or 12-story buildings there.
Okay? You know, Robin, I always use as the perfect example, and of course, many people can point it within their own communities as their own perfect example. But in the Northwest Bronx neck of the woods, the perfect example I like to use was the disaster with the Webster Avenue rezoning in 2008, 2009. Right. And it was pushed by the New York Botanical Garden, who went to Community Board 7 and sort of insisted we needed zoning changes. It was proposed at that time that we were going to have an equal amount of residential and commercial development, because supposedly at that time, Webster Avenue, according to the experts, was underdeveloped, and this combination of development would, of course, make it better for everybody. It would be better for the residents, it would be better for the businesses, it would be better for the garden and the botanical garden. And making arrangements with the community board, promised things like, oh, we'll give you reduced parking rates because we're going to build a parking lot there, and we'll give the community a certain amount of spaces. 15 years later, I can tell you the community has 0 parking space. 15 years later, I can tell you that Webster Avenue is now 90% residential development.
With
15
tall
years
buildings.
later, I can now tell you Webster Avenue, out of that residential development, 90% of that 90% is basically through the affordable lottery code. And the only 10% that is commercial, that happens, by the way, to be rising very quickly, is only coming from the New York Botanical Garden, that has now built not only a parking lot, not only a senior center, not only a low income project, but now they've just gotten approved, to my understanding, a second senior center in the back of the first one. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the area I'm talking about is Bedford Park Boulevard and Webster Avenue, coincidentally, right next to the parking lot and the lovely New York Botanical Garden.
Well, we're going to move on a little bit, Anthony. On Wednesday night was the Bronx Democratic County dinner. And I've covered the Bronx Democratic County dinner for the past 6 or 7 years, all right, when they had it, going back to when Carl Hasty took over. And Wednesday night, I went in to see the Bronx County to cover it, and I was told no media. Okay? I was told to leave. On my way out, I saw the Bronx Democratic County leader, Jamal Bailey, and this is what happened to me. He turned his back on me. There is another person in the photo, a woman who he said was his wife, and said, "Don't take any pictures of my wife." When I said, "All right, we'll turn around and let me take a picture of you," then he just kept walking, as you see. And the valet over there said, "Please leave the premise." Okay, so I did not get into the Bronx Democratic County dinner, which I have covered for the past 7 years. I have no idea what they're trying to hide this year, except that we know that they're putting up candidates who never filed petitions, and they just got on because other people said, "Well, I won't run, so you can put this person in." And our guest today is facing one of those opponents, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I wound up at a better event. I wound up at Maestro's, where there was an event against Just Home, which is the proposed jail, and I'll call it a jail because that's what it is. It's inmates from Rikers Island that are going to be putting there. So what do you do? What do you call something where they're taking people from Rikers Island, which is the jail, and putting them into Jacoby Hospital, Anthony? They're going to make permanent residence at Jacoby Hospital for these people.
Well, let's take a step back. You started off talking about the dinner, and then all of a sudden, and who is that? Bronx Joe NYC. Why am asked for the video, Anthony? Because I'm not alone. You may think COVID is over. Some people do not. I am one of them. And remember, the mask is not to protect me, it's to protect you. So I hope I answered that question. Now, Bob, you started off by talking about the Bronx Democratic dinner. So I don't want to give a report because that's not the reason why I was there. I stopped by with a former city councilman. It was really a combination of business and pleasure. I think between the both of us, we were there, give or take less than an hour. But I will say, it was well attended. You had notables such as you mentioned a moment ago, Natalia Fernandez was there. Miss Karina Reyes. Ms. Reyes, happy birthday, by the way, was there. Jeffrey and Eric Dinowitz were also there. Oswald Felix was there. By the way, Bob, I forgot to tell you, your friend Dan Johnson was also there. And Kenny Augusto was there, Aisha Bravo was there, and even your friend Bill White was there, Bob. And notice, ladies and gentlemen, I'm mentioning all the muckety mucks, right? A lot of them were there, but I would say the stars of the show, in my opinion, and again, I was only there for, a little less than an hour, but I did see Chuck Schumer walk in as I was leaving, and the city council speaker, Mrs. Adams, or I should say Ms. Adams, was there when I got there. So I don't know how much money they made. They could have made billions based on what I heard the price was, but it looked like it was well attended. And I hope that the new chairperson, Jamal Bailey, uses both the influence and the money very wisely.
Well,
in regards to the second part of your question, is it a jail? That's what your question was?
No, let's continue with the Bronx Democratic County dinner, because I was there, and this is how far back I go, when Kathy Hochul became the lieutenant governor, okay, and she was taking pictures. And I asked her a question. I said, the governor's plane is up in the rainstorm tonight. And, it's possible that the plane could crash. Are you ready to take over the administration if that plane should crash and something should happen to the governor? And she went like this, as if, it was a deer with an oncoming car. That was her expression. And now she is the governor. Okay, so obviously they don't want me asking questions of politicians at the Bronx Democratic County dinners. All right, but we're going to get into something a little later. And I want to discuss, before we get off, the Italian Heritage dinner last night that the Bronx Borough President, Vanessa Gibson, had. I've been to many of Ruben Diaz's events, and including this one, which was at the Bronx Zoo. And I gave this event an A+. Even though it's her first year, Vanessa Gibson looked like it was her 10th year. She was a pro at it. It ran smoothly. And here is a photo of our guest today, Ms. Phyllis Tisnastachio, with the Bronx Borough President, who congratulated her on being the chair of the Columbus Day Parade. And I got to say one thing. She did an excellent job. This is Ms. Tisnastachio, as the chair of the Columbus Day Parade. And our borough president did an excellent job last night. You were there, Anthony. What did you think of it?
Well, Bob, I'm going to tell you as soon as you stop throwing all those kisses around, because I don't want to get, I don't want to get caught in all the slobbing that you're doing over there. To answer your question, and by the way, Bob, I don't never seen you at any prior Italian dinners, but I might have missed you. But to answer your question, yes, it was an excellent event, a little different than prior years. But I would say it being her first event at the festival, I thought she did a tremendously good job. I also would give it an A. I wouldn't give it an A+ only because while she did some different things that I thought were new in the parade. So, for example, as I said to you off air, I thought it was very appropriate that when they played the Italian national anthem, this was the first year that they actually have video of Italy as opposed to just a flag. And I thought that was a very nice touch. But on the other side of the coin, in prior celebrations, with the agenda that you just showed, they would always have things like maybe an Italian song in between, or something of the Italian heritage. It might be dancing. So, and they would incorporate it into the agenda. Now, I noticed that was missing. Overall, I give it an A, and I do believe that as the as Ms. Gibson fits into the role better, the festival itself will be better. But I have to end it though by saying, I wouldn't give Gibson or Diaz too much credit, because the one good thing about Italians is that we're coming out. So that's going to be an A, regardless of who the borough president is.
Before, we're going to go to break in a minute, Anthony, or a few seconds. It was very nice to see the Borough President Gibson, be so gracious to the student who was honored also from Preston High School. And let me get her name. Her name was Dominica Zalilo. I hope I pronounced that right. Student of Preston High School, who had a 97% grade average, is a cheerleader. I forgot what else the borough president, she must have said about 5 or 6 things that this young lady does. And she was very proud of this young lady and Preston High School. And it's time for us to go to a break, Anthony. So let's go to our commercials right now, and then we'll have our guest, Ms. Phyllis Natasio of the 8th Assembly, running for the 80th Assembly District. Mr. Perdue, can we go to commercial, please?
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
Okay, welcome back to the show. We have our guest who told me that I butchered the young lady's name, so she will correct it. And let me introduce her. Are you there, Anthony? It's Miss Phyllis Natasio, who is a candidate for the 80th Assembly District, which current Assemblywoman Natalia Fernandez has vacated or is vacating because she's running for state senate. So, Anthony, do you want to...
or as the Northwest Bronx Democrats likes to call her, Mother Tiz, because only your mother would have reached out to you to tell you to correct that name.
Absolutely.
Okay, so correct the name for me then.
Domenica Zallo.
Okay.
And she is from, her mom is one of the co-owners of Patsy's Pizzeria on Morris Park.
Okay, Anthony, do you want to get into this, or you want to? Let's have Phyllis say a few words. How is the campaign going?
It's going really, really well. I'm very happy. I have a lot of community support. Most of the community leaders are backing me. On the west side, I have Cirio Guarino and Sally Caldwell, and of course, Anthony. And on the east side, I have Bernadette Ferrara, Al D'Angelo, Grace Lavaglio, Stephen Glosser, and the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm. I see, and again, you're at events, but here is your opponent at the Bronx Botanical Gardens, Anthony's favorite place, with his boss, Councilman Raphael Salamanca, and it seems like South Bronx, and I'm going to call him South Bronx John, because his councilman is in the South Bronx. Mm-hmm. And when we were at the Van Ness Neighborhood Association, he mistook the White Plains Road shelter and called it the Westchester Avenue shelter. But of course, he would think that since he's in the South Bronx and he hasn't been out here in the North Bronx. And it looks like he's using his boss, Councilman Raphael Salamanca, as a crutch. Now,
Robert,
Anthony,
Robert, if I might, the only thing I found very disturbing about the picture that you just shown, and I've seen that picture, is that happened to be the same night that the Pelham Parkway Neighborhood Association meeting took place. That I know was a monthly meeting. They always meet about monthly issues. Mm-hmm. I was at that meeting where they talked about sanitation related issues. And of course, Ms. Phyllis Natasio was there as well. I mean, of course, you know, things happen to people get sick. I'm fighting a cold now as I'm talking to you, but I was very surprised to see that as a candidate, and I understand he has to work like we all have to work, but I was surprised he was there as opposed to the neighborhood meeting. Phyllis, if I can take a step back, could you share with our audience a little bit about you?
I'm currently a teacher at St. Francis Xavier School on Morris Park. I sit on the community board. I am the co-chair of the Public Safety Committee, and I am also on the Education Committee. I am an executive board member from the Precinct Council, 49th Precinct Council. I'm a member of the Morris Park Association. I'm a member of the Van Ness Neighborhood Alliance, all the community organizations.
And how long have you lived in that area?
I've lived in the Bronx my whole life. In this area, 32 years. But I was born on Arthur Avenue, so I've always been within a 2-mile radius of this area.
Are you willing to debate your opponent?
Absolutely.
I understand that Gary Axelbank is trying to put something together, as he always does. But, you know, unfortunately, Gary Axelbank sometimes takes the side of the Bronx Democratic Party, okay, because they're the ones who give him people, and they're all the elected people. You are running on the Republican and conservative line, I understand.
Yes.
So if you can't vote Republican, you can vote conservative for Ms. Pistachio. I mean, I've seen you all around the neighborhood. We've been at many different meetings together. At the community board, I've seen you, and you stood up for issues at the community board, including the Just Home project at Jacoby Hospital, which I know you're opposed to.
Fiercely.
Okay, I am too, for various reasons. And we're getting information, though, on that project little by little after things happen. Are you? What is your opinion of that? Should we be giving this information up front or get it afterwards?
Absolutely up front. We need to know about things as they're happening. We can't play Monday night quarterback here.
Because if we read this Just Home, I showed this last time, the 7 pages, and we go to 7 pages that we received hours before the public hearing. On the back, it says 50 inmates from Rikers every year will be needing spaces to live. And it says that the entire Jacoby campus is zoned for housing. Okay, what that tells me is that I can just see in a year or two after this is starting, a building going up, or even before that, because they're going to need more room, a building going up in the parking lot right next to this building 2 where they're going to have this Just Home. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I don't think so, because we're going to stop it. This first one is not going to happen.
How are you going to stop it? Because it's already in process. Although the funding is not fully there, they have $1 million for the funding, but it says Fortune Society is going to have to raise money. They're going to have to raise it. So again, I agree with you. It's not in there in stone. We have a head of HHC who doesn't like cars and wants to build housing on the HHC property, which they're doing in other boroughs. But let me, go ahead.
Who is that? Who's the head of HHC that doesn't
Mitchell
like
Katz.
Okay.
Mitchell, he makes $660,000 a year. I mean, I can't believe that. That's 3 times what the mayor makes.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a bit about what you do on the community board with the education committee? Because I know there's a problem with middle schools. What's happening with that?
Well, we've been asking for a middle school for years, and our current elected officials just don't seem to listen. They did build on to PS 108, but they did not add middle school seats. They just expanded their current seats, K to 5. We need a middle school. Our kids are going from 108 across the parkway over here to 144. It's not an easy commute for them. It's not a 1 bus trip. We need to stop adding things that will not help our community and start adding what we need. We need middle school seats. Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm going to ask you sort of a multi-pronged question, if I might.
Okay.
Of course, campaigning, you have to hit every area of the district. So I'm just curious. On the west side, I'm going to mention Norwood, and on the east side, I'm going to mention areas such as Allerton and Indian Village. I presume you've been to all 3 in your campaign travels. In your opinion, based on your travels and based on people you've spoken to in those areas, what do you think those areas need the most?
There's not one thing. We need schools. We need community centers. Everybody wants a community center for their neighborhood. We have no place for our kids to go. We need to stop shoving people into our communities without giving us things that we need. They're building all over the place, especially in Norwood. The buildings are going up like crazy. They're not adding seats for the kids. They're not giving us schools. We have no community centers for the kids to go to. So they need to stop building and start giving us some things that we need. They're not fixing infrastructure. I mean, they're just shoving people in like sardines.
So as a state assembly person, of which I know some of that you control, but a lot of that you wouldn't control because that will fall on the city guidelines.
I might not be able to control it, but I can try to influence those that do control it.
That was my question. How hard would you be with the people that do control it?
I would be fierce. I will bring the Bronx attitude and fight.
Yes, because it's a shame that Bronx student performance in 2019, before the pandemic, was at 67% in the public schools. And other 4 boroughs were over 80%. Now, we have a question here from Ephraim Gonzalez. Why won't New York Parrot Talking Politics host a debate for the 80th Assembly District? We would love to, Mr. Gonzalez, Ephraim. But in the past, we've invited the Democratic candidates on. We had Gustavo Rivera on this show, and we wanted to have his opponent, Ms. Camilo, but the Bronx Democratic Party said, no, we don't want our candidates coming on your show. So here is an open invitation to Mr. John Zaccaro Jr., your opponent, Ms. Nastasio. John, we invite you to come on our show either next week or the following week. Please call Anthony or myself to confirm. And if we don't hear from you, we're going to have to figure that the Bronx Democratic Party does not want you to come on our show. Why won't you come on? Why won't the Bronx Democratic Party let their candidates come on? Ephraim, if you have any pull with the Bronx Democratic Party, maybe you can say that or talk to John Zaccaro Jr. or Raphael Salamanca. We would love to have Raphael Salamanca on also to see what's going to happen with this just home. All right. But what do you think happened with the Bruckner upzoning, Ms. Candidate Nastasio?
I am so angry over that. You have no idea. Was she influenced to make the decision she made? I don't have the inside information. Was she offered something because of it? I can't say. We really won't know until she comes out and tells us. Now,
you said you're a teacher. You're in a Catholic school. And
Bob, forgive me for a moment. Candidate Nastasio, forgive me for asking you this question. I asked you this question as the founder of a political club called the Bronx Democrats. Do you think that Marjorie, at the time that she said it, lied?
You mean lied to the community?
Did she lie? Well, she said she was going to support the community, and then she turned around and didn't. So, there's only one conclusion you can make when it comes to that.
I'm going to ask you a second part to that question because, as you said a moment ago, the only ones that know that answer is her and maybe somebody else. But I'm a very visual type guy. And I'm the type of person that I like to look at something and, sometimes actions speak for themselves. Sometimes inactions also speak for themselves. I remember Councilwoman Velasquez and even candidate John Zaccaro as early as 2 weeks ago saying, community, don't worry, I have deference power. And as long as I have that deference power, we're going to be safe. And I did not see any execution of that deference power.
She didn't ask for deference. She didn't. So why? Why didn't she ask for deference? Why did she go against the community that she said she was going to support?
Well, let me get back to what I was saying about the Catholic school. Now, I went to private school for the first 6 years of my life. And when I went into junior high school, I was 2 years advanced. I know the private schools are better than the public schools. And then having been a PA president and a person all the way up to the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council, I can see what happens in public schools. And we've seen it in Riverdale with Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz and others, where certain people get in and certain people don't. Why are the Catholic schools and private schools doing much better? And of course, you don't get the funding. You get about 1/3 the funding, if I'm not mistaken. Why is that your private schools do a better job?
Well, we reach out to the families. A Catholic school is a family unit, and the families are included. We have meetings, we have events. It always includes the families. We don't really have that in public schools.
No, because as I was a PA president, and only a few parents come to the PA meetings, and the higher up you go, the less the parents. And when you get to high school, no parents are involved at all,
Right.
basically.
Parent involvement is key. And also the teachers. In my school, when there's events at night, the teachers come. We involve ourselves in every aspect of school life for the kids. We attend basketball games. We attend card parties, penny socials. Anything that is being held at the school, we attend.
Right. And those things are going away one by one by one. And again, like I could say from my experience as a PA president and above, that the public schools are just, and they have what's known as education panels. All right. And
Robert.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
know.
also going to share this with Tiz. Robert, I'm also going to share this with Tiz as well. I think you're totally inaccurate. The reason why I think you're inaccurate is because I went to Catholic school as well. And I also went to public school as well. I went to public school at John F. Kennedy High School when it was known as one of the elite high schools in the nation. So, and I thought the teaching in that school was excellent. And I never remember my mother coming to one meeting unless she was coming there to kick my butt. Outside of that, she wasn't coming. And I didn't see too many parents involved in public school matters either. So I would venture to say that I think it's a little bit more beyond parent involvement.
Anthony, you're talking about an era where both parents were working. And my father worked nights and my mother worked during the day. So when I went to school, and I went to Far Rockaway High School, which was the best academic high school when I was there, behind the specialized high schools, and we were number one in football. By the way, do you have a football team on your school?
No, not at our level.
No?
No.
Okay.
Basketball, cheerleading.
Oh, and as we saw, Preston High, so in essence, though, your children would move on to Preston High School, say, and wind up, over there, like we saw the young lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We have about 5 minutes left. Anthony, you have another question?
I do. And I apologize. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I could barely hear you, so it's on my side. So if I'm screaming, I apologize. Phyllis, I understand that you have a number of people working on your campaign, and you also have a volunteer party coming up. Would you like to tell us?
I can't hear your question, Anthony.
Okay, he's talking about the volunteers that are working on your campaign and that you have a volunteer party coming up. Would you like to talk about that volunteer party where people can join in and join your campaign?
Yes. Okay, hold on. I don't have the date in front of me. I do have a dinner tonight for supporters, and the volunteer party, I can't find the date. Hold on. Is the 24th. Sorry. The 24th at 6 p.m. And we're going to be inviting people to come and just meet with me, see if they want to volunteer, hear about what they would have to do when they volunteer, what their responsibilities would be, and hopefully we can get some people out in the streets.
And the reason you need the volunteers is because your opponent is with the Bronx Democratic County organization, and he has some unions backing him. But
I wouldn't want unions backing me.
Right.
I want community members backing me. I'm not going to accept an endorsement from a union and have to be beholden to them.
Well, that was what I was just going to say, because if he would get elected, he would be beholden to that union.
Absolutely. And that's how the Bruckner upzoning got passed. The unions pulled their power.
We saw
They don't live in my community. They are not my community members. I would not accept an endorsement from a union.
Okay. Any final comments you want to say before we go to the Northwest Bronx segment, if we can get Anthony back?
Well, the most important thing for our community to know is we have to get out and vote. We have a terrible voting record, and that's why we don't get everything that we need, because they don't care about us because we don't vote. You need to vote. I don't care who you're voting for. We need to show the power of the vote.
Anthony, any final words since I see you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I apologize, everyone. And I'm going to give up our segment today, Bob, so we can have Phyllis on for a little bit longer. But Phyllis, why should we vote for you?
Well, I've lived here. I know what my community needs. I've been volunteering in my community long before I decided to run for office. I am going to bring a fierce fight to Albany.
When you say fierce fight, and you mentioned you were a member of your local precinct community council, let's talk about some micro local issues. Crime. You know, depending on how you look at the numbers, some would say crime is going down. Some would say crime is going up.
You can't say crime is going down. I'm on the council. I know what the numbers are. Crime stats are released every month. Crime is not going down. Crime is skyrocketing.
So what do you think both the city council person and the state assembly person should do to try to make the neighborhood safer?
Well, number one is bail reform. Bail reform needs to be fixed, and it needs a deep fix. We need more police officers. In the 49th precinct, we are losing 2 sector cars every tour to other precincts and to the train stations. So that's 2 sector cars that are not helping our community. That's why when you call the precinct or you have an accident, you're waiting for 6-7 hours before a police car shows up. They don't have enough cops anymore. We have 13 detectives to handle the whole precinct. That's unheard of. It's insane. We need better funding. We need to change bail reform. And we need community centers to get our kids off the streets.
That goes to what I was saying with the education, because there used to be after school programs in the schools. And they went years and years ago, they went out. And I mean, in public schools, you can see the children are there to learn. But by the time they get to 5th grade, they're already inducted into gangs. Okay. And when I see the children coming from the private schools, I'll say private rather than Catholic schools, but Catholic schools have a dress code. Am I right on that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I mean, the students are you know, uniform. They're you know, taught what they should do and what they shouldn't do. I mean, I wish we had more, you know, private schools. They're called now charter schools that replace the Catholic schools. But I mean, I can't say enough for the private schools, because like Anthony, I went to one my first few years, and they were advanced than the regular public schools.
Yeah, but also keep in mind, 90% of the Bronx calls me a madman, right? So it could have came from Catholic school. What we're really talking about, though, are rules and regulations, right?
But you know what, Anthony? Excuse me. Why shouldn't parents have the choice of where they send their child?
No, I'm not saying they
exactly. No, I know. But that's one of my big issues.
Right, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, earlier you said parent involvement, and I was trying to use as an example something we just used right now, which is rules and regulations. Those people do not wear a dress code because their family told them to wear it. They wear a dress code because there's rules and regulations within the school. Whether it's private, whether it's charter, whether it's public, whether it's orange, whether it's green. There are rules and regulations. So let me ask you, I guess, a very extreme question, which is, would you advocate a dress code in public schools?
Well, public schools have a uniform option, at least in the elementary school level. The high school, no. I think there should always be a dress code.
When you say dress code, and let's talk about elementary school, because I think if you're going to imply it, that's the place where it should be applied. Give me an example of what that means.
Appropriate. You have to dress appropriately. When we have our volleyball game, which is in the evening, the kids wear shorts. They are told the shorts must be knee length. They cannot come to the game wearing short shorts. I mean, that's just not something that's appropriate in school. What you want to do when you're home is your business. But in school, you have to dress appropriately.
Mr. Producer, if you can put my picture up and again. Here is the current assemblywoman. And I said this is inappropriate dress because she's got sneakers on without any socks. She put on a pair of pants. Mr. Producer, can we keep it back on? She looks like she's in a bed shirt. That's something that you'd wear to go to bed, and an old denim jacket. Her hair doesn't even look like it's been washed. And she's coming to an event. Do you think she was appropriately dressed, and would you ever dress like that?
She's an adult. She can dress how she wants. Do I wear sneakers without socks? Yeah, I do all the time. I wear ripped jeans, but I dress for where I'm going. That was the way she chose to dress. That's on
right,
her.
but you're not an elected official. Okay, when you're an elected official, are you going to continue dressing that way, or are you going to dress as an elected official?
If I'm attending official events, I will dress as an elected official.
Because what I can say, and that assemblywoman is now running for state senate, Ms. Biaggi's seat, which is going to be vacant. And one thing I can say about Alessandra Biaggi dressed appropriately for everything. Yes. No matter when she wore jeans or anything, she was always appropriately dressed. And that's.
Did we lose Bob?
We might have. Robert, you there? Tiz, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Anthony. One thing.
All right, so let's guide this a little bit.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
I don't agree with attacking the way people are dressed. That was the way she chose to dress. That's it. I don't believe.
Yeah, and I'd be honest with you, I'm not sure if it's part of the conversation I wanted to have. So let's stay again on local issues for a moment. In your district, both on the east side and west side, and and it's funny because I noticed there's a little debate about this. I believe our district, or the 80th Assembly District, has wonderful parks. I'm curious about your feeling, both as an advocate and as well as a possible state assembly person, what we can do to increase the maintenance of parks. And what I mean by parks are not just small parks like Loretto Park, but I also consider areas such as Pelham Parkway, Marshallou Parkway to be just as important.
Well, one thing I know for sure is Parks Department is severely underfunded. They get no funding whatsoever, basically. So that needs to be increased. They need to be able to sustain themselves. Excuse the person walking in the background.
No, that is fine. Is now the time to indicate that is Mrs. Nastasio?
That was Mr. Nastasio. Yes, it was.
Well, you know what? Then I'm going to ask you, if it's okay, a question that I'm sure many candidates and elected officials don't get asked, which is, how does your other half feel about you not just running for office, but of course your community work in general? I'm sure it must keep you, out of your home. And
he's fine with it.
Yeah, I'm sure your husband.
He's totally fine with it. Yeah.
He's totally fine with it. And I also understand you have another little baby in the house.
Yep. I don't think you could see her though. Layla, come here, mommy. No, she's looking for daddy.
She's looking for daddy?
She's definitely a daddy's girl.
Okay, and does she understand too that, sometimes you're going to be out of the house a long period of time?
I will tell you one thing though. If I do win this election in November, which I'm pretty sure I will, I will be making sure that I have a place in Albany that I can take her with me because I won't leave her home.
And let's be clear, we're talking about a dog.
Yes, my dog.
Because of course.
My children are grown. They don't need me anymore. My baby grown.
Right. Right. So I'm talking to an animal lover, huh?
Yes, absolutely. And that's another thing we're lacking here. We have no animal shelters.
Real quick on that, because I see we're losing our time very quickly, but real quick on that, both sides of the Bronx, East and West, have been hearing about, the formation of an animal shelter for many years now.
Mm-hmm. But where is it? Where is it? We've been hearing about it for years, correct? But it's not here. Is it ever coming here? I don't know.
Can you make that happen?
I hope so. I will definitely try to make it happen. And not in Co-op City, which is where they want to put it, because let's be fair, the people in Co-op City cannot have dogs. They're not allowed to have dogs. So why are we burdening them? If you've ever been to Co-op City around Christmas time or any of the holidays, the traffic is insane. I mean, I'm right near Co-op City. It's insane. And we're going to overburden them with another thing to cause more traffic. It shouldn't be there. We have plenty of other places we can put one.
Let's talk about that. And let me quickly say, we only have about 2 minutes left, but let's talk about traffic real quick. What's your feeling and opinion about bike lanes?
I don't mind the bike lanes if they're done with some thought. The one they just put on Bronxdale Avenue is a disaster. It's dangerous. You can't see pulling out of spots. It's not something we've ever seen. All of our bike lanes are car, bike, drive. This one they threw on, which is bike, park, drive. It's insane. No, it's unsafe. It's creating a lot of confusion for people. It's not something we're used to. You can't just throw something at the community without any discussion.
Phyllis, I want to thank you for being on our show. And Robert, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yes, I'm back on. It seems I'm 1 block from Natalia Fernandez's assembly office. So I'm going to have to investigate this. Now, I don't like these comments. Some of them are saying she should be investigated by the Department of Investigation. Something was done. There will be an election next year. Councilwoman Velazquez will be up for the re-election. And I'm sure there'll be about 8 or 10 people running against her. And the public is going to have to choose whether they want to re-elect Marjorie Velazquez or put somebody else in. And I want to thank our people who commented on the show. If you want Ephraim Gonzalez on the show, let me know. My address, my email is 100 and then the word %BronxNews@gmail.com. And John Sicaro Jr., we have an open invitation for you to come on the show. Let us please know. There's my email. You have my number, my phone number. You can contact Anthony. And let's just say thank you for watching and have
He didn't contact Anthony. He can contact you.